So this will last till kingdom come, literally. But all you're doing, it's a special varnish you put on there. When it tacks, you just drop your gold leaf on, and that's all you're doing. Now, if the tacking is about 24 hours, if you do it at hour 23 and you put the gold on, it'll be extremely shiny, high gloss. This I put on as in demonstrations after 2 minutes. So it's getting absorbed into the thickness of the glue, more solvent, and that's why it's quite the matte finish. But again, so this is oil gilding. So we have water gilding and we have oil gilding. And then the other gilding is bronze doré, which everyone's familiar with, you know, a lot of French clocks and things like that. And again, my landlord, and he was my teacher for that for a year. I'd go to his studio once a year and do the bronze doré. And I gave in your handout something I created from when I was there, mold making and how to do bronze doré. So it is in your handout there. It was published in Golden 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. So when I was over there, I cast, so I made this dial. We talked about dials yesterday, watching the guy, the gentleman, he's doing his engraving. So basically I had some sheet stock, so I made my dial, and we'll come back to the marquetry quickly. We're going back and forth here, I know. But these are bronze doré, okay? So that's mercury gilding. So creating a pot with mercury and 24 karat gold, and getting it up to 2400 degrees and mixing it around. And I have these spandrels, which I cast, on a hot plate, about 1800 degrees, and I'm flicking them. It's more of a stippling action of flicking the hot gold and the hot amalgam on here. And then you still have to come back within reason, and it's just like the gesso. You have to come back and actually chasing and recarving and smoothing and burnishing. But to what degree do you do it? So on some of the finer Georgian type spandrels, we see a great degree of chasing done and detailing and punching done after the fact, after the gold is on there and burnishing. And I didn't take this to quite that extent. Excuse me, just to use an example of what I can do by creating this dial. Finished with the dial now. The chapter ring, as in all these chapter rings we're talking about on the clocks in the museum, are out of brass. It's silver, basically using silver nitrate. It's going to be a dry powder, which you know, from Time Savers or Merits, have it right there, or there is a silvering solution you can use. And it's very non-toxic and it works very well. Traditionally, in the engraved areas of the numerals and the name, they used a shellac wax mixture. So they heated shellac up and they put a little wax to make it pliable, and they put it on and then just started squeegeeing it off. And in my classes, that's what we do today. We're using like an old credit card or something with flexibility. So put this on the bench, put a little Bunsen burner here, just that one area, just get it warm enough for the shellac to liquefy, and then just start moving it off, and come with a very fine abrasive of the whole thing, about 600 grit when you're done to clean it up. And that's what you get. So, about 2 hours into this, and the second's bit ring. And then up here, you know, this is some of my finer engraving. That's my motif and my name. So I can pass this around. And I was experimenting. You know, I carved the back. You can see the raw engraving in the back of this. Ship. I actually make dials with rocking ships too. And so it's good. I'll just cut this guy out and put him on a stem to the second hand. So I'll give this to you. Any questions about that? How to silver and fill in
the letters, you said you just use shellac, or you mix that with plastic?
Well, the cheap way today is the Time Savers sells a little stick. It's supposedly shellac, but I have various recipes of shellac, resin, and resins and things like that. So again, if the client's being a real stickler, we can analyze these and tell exactly what's in there and replace it with exactly what wasn't.
But I mean, if you use pure shellac,
you could use pure shellac. Get your shellac in a mixture, let it stand out with the top off, get it into a syrupy, slurpy, gooey type consistency, and you know, just get a nail and pick it up and just start dripping it until it floats out. And it's going to take a while to dry, you know, a couple weeks or a month. That works too. But put carbon black in it. So you know, you get a candle, Bunsen burner, turn a propane torch down, reduce the air, so it's putting out a lot of black, and you know, put a piece of metal, then scrape it off, and then incorporate it into your shellac. And that's just how they did it. Or actually, they sent the fellow around who would light the candle, would light the gas lights, and he would just clean them, and then he would come back to the concert, the shop of the gilder, and then or the painters, and that's how they get their carbon black in the period. So, okay, we were. Let's see. not that this is a very hot PowerPoint. Anyway, this is me in action. This is laying a piece of gold and replacing a missing flower leaf that's carved in wood for a monumental mirror that was done in Philadelphia in the 18th century. Here I'm using the technique here of actually recutting. So I laid the gesso down, now I have to recut that to put the detail back in. Finish frame. And the gold is not the issue here. The gold right now for the Minette from Florence is about $100 a book. So that little book is 25 sheets, 25 leaves, it's $100. So it's high right now, and it's been there. But it's still not the point. I mean, on this particular frame, I think I had $5,000 in gold, just actually cost. So that's not the main cost of that frame, the cost is me. So probably not, you know, the frame restoration is about $15,000. But, you know, young people starting out, they're worried about the gold missing, drop it on the floor, forget it. And the same thing for oil gilding. That oil gilding, you can go back when you have carbon, and you can get in there and burnish, and you can chase, and you can do the same thing, or bronze array. I was going to talk about this, we have no time, it's probably not a big deal, no one is interested in this, but we can send this to you if you want, if we have your email address, what I use for rust removal. I've just gotten a couple movements in, 18th century movements with multiple bells, and they've been in a fire. Two tall blocks have burned up, and when that carbon infuses at the point of oxidation on the surface, it hits the surface, and it is a bugger to get off. So this is the greatest technique to get started on the soot and the rust removal. So just a quick mention, because marquetry and veneering are kind of tied in, and how do they do veneering? And English clocks, almost all English clocks, and very few American clocks are veneered. So they have your base material, which your case is made out of, called a substrate. A lot of oak, a lot of pine in England, and you're going to use veneer. So veneer is, you know, just a very thin cut piece of wood. In the period, though, it was around 1/8 of an inch. So when I'm doing marquetry in Paris, when I buy wood, it's 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 to 1/8. So that's the range. Here it's 128th of an inch. That's all we can buy here. We have 3 or 4 veneer suppliers in the States. So when I'm doing a real restoration, I need to contact, this is shocking, the only veneer mill left in all of Europe is in Paris. Since I've been out of Paris now for about 10 years, about 15 to 20 have gone under. So there's one left, and that's for sale. So it's very shocking. It's been there since 1690. 9 generations in this veneer family, and before Paris was a wooden structured town. It wasn't the grand boulevards today with the the stone facades. They actually created a underground tunnel that went on for 8 8 city blocks, and they floated logs from the Seine that would be coming from Africa and from South America, and they float from the Seine. And they float them into this fellow's, it opens up into this room, the water's coming in, all of a sudden, the log's coming under, and they would have like a mule or horse track next to it to drag the logs under. And then several people would roll it up on like an incline, and then they'd start cutting it with a pit saw here after it dried, of course. And a lot of these logs were ballast for ships. And the man I'm talking about, his name was George, he goes by one name, George. And George has about 25 of these 18th century logs. There are 6 to 12 foot diameter mahogany trees, 120 feet long. And it's the most beautiful wood. If you like mahogany, there's no stain added in these. I mean, you just put the shellac on it, and it's just to die for. And right now it's selling for about $982 to $1,200 a square meter. But he's for sale, and there's no one else. So when George is cutting, he's using an 1810 pit saw that's been modified by steam for all these years. When they're cutting, you're resulting in 1/16 to an 1/8 inch thick veneer. Okay, and it's the only way we can match up, other than having to double a piece of veneer. The problem is the period pieces in England, the clock cases, and the furniture, and France, and Germany were done with a pit saw. There's no way, if you're a restored here or museum, that you can compete to do what you need to do without having the right materials. It's the shearing of the saw blade, the vertical saw blade that you're trying to match, and you can't match it. And to boot, they're using old wood to do this, okay? So it creates an issue. Nevertheless, this is mahogany cut here in America. And now in the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, there's been a moratorium on mahogany. So basically, all the mahogany logs that people have had hoarding, businesses, they're cutting up, but there's been no cutting allowed in Central America, South America. So, you know, and that's good and that's bad, but I mean, you know, we need some kind of conservation here too. In the forest, obviously we do, but not clear cutting. So what they would do is they would take the high glue, the hot high glue, and you put a layer of hot high glue down, but you put this piece, so if they're doing a clock case side, they're doing this side, before it's assembled, so they're gonna do all the veneering before it's assembled. So they'll put that side down on a hard piece of steel over the fire. So they'll get that up to maybe 110 degrees. So the piece of wood, substrate's 110 degrees. They put the hot high glue down. They hydrate the piece of veneer because you don't want all your moisture to be lost in the piece of veneer. So the high glue goes on here, you put your piece of veneer down quickly, and this is a veneer hammer, and you use it as a squeegee. So this piece is in your bench, that clock side, so to speak, is in your bench. And you're literally squeegeeing the high glue underneath. But because we have high glue underneath, we put high glue on the top. So we're going back and forth like this, literally pulling the glue off. And it's almost like mucus, it gums up into balls, but we're pulling it off. And within 2 minutes, that whole side could be veneered. You put it aside, let it dry for a couple days, and it's done a few things. So what it's done, it's adhered the piece of veneer down, but also it's filled with pores, of very porous woods, rosewoods, mahogany, ebonies, and things like that. And in that glue you put on top to counteract the moisture from the bottom, you may want to put brick dust or some other kind of color that you can highlight the mahogany that you're doing. Because you can see here the pores are very dark in the mahogany. Maybe we want to have the same color pores, maybe we want to have green pores, but they could do whatever they wanted with putting various powders in the 18th and 17th century in the high glue when they're doing their veneering, their hammer veneering. So again, hammer veneering was squeegeeing. And this end was just if something was being a little cantankerous, to really push down and move it around.
And then once they done that, they remove it from the heat then?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so the marquetry is using veneer, and the French call it painting in wood, to create a picture. Yeah. So I apprenticed for 2 years, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, in this art of marquetry. And again, we've seen marquetry clocks in the museum here, and that's the kind of restoration I've done a lot of Daniel Quer clocks, you know, pre-1700 their cases. Restoration, conservation is a little bit different than doing the new from new, but anyway, we'll just try to describe the process from new for you here. Let's see what we have a picture of the Chevrolet. Here's your hammer veneering.
So that veneer is wet then when you're putting on, you start it's actually wet?
Well, you want to wet the top of it with the high glue also, but then your substrate has high glue, so both sides have high glue on it, and that's the wetting agent for the top. Yeah.
Oh, because you don't put water on.
No, but because it'll cup if it's not. We actually have this panel here. This is like a puzzle. So the process is everybody okay standing, or do you want to sit back down?
No, this is fine.
You're all good? Okay, okay. So when I was an apprentice, I was in Versailles. They sent us to Versailles, so I was in Versailles 3 times a week. So Versailles has an armoire that's lost a door. And so we come up, and I have a door, and the door is sitting in front of me, so the guy says, the chef says, copy it. Okay, how do I copy it? Okay, easier said than done. So I have to make a copy of that picture, that original picture I'm copying. Or if I'm doing my own picture, I could do your face, somebody's body in the room. I could do a profile of it with 10, 15, 20 different woods. So I do the picture, and then I write on here. I determine what I want the flower to be: a green poplar, or a blue sycamore, or a tulip tree, or something like that, or magnolia tree. So I determine all my different woods. Also, you have to determine the kind of, in your mind has to be the grain structure of the wood, curl in the woods, how the wood accepts finish, and all kind of things. So you create your picture. This has 20 different species of woods in it. This is tulip poplar is what it looks like in Paris, this background. So we'll put some alcohol in it, that's why I brought the alcohol, not for us. But anyway, so what you do is you create the picture on a piece of paper, and you put it on here, and you kind of transpose it on here. And even in the 18th century, they were using a little wheel with little spikes, almost like a pie crimper, you know. And they run that wheel, a very, very small wheel, it's about 10 millimeters in diameter, and they roll it around, and they create these little dots in here, so you know where to cut out. So then, 20 different species of wood, I take 20 different pieces of veneer that represent them, and I create a packet. Just imagine, there's only there's just 2 species of wood in here, or 3. So I create a packet like this with sacrificial pieces on either side. So I have one with 20, it's nailed together. I get on the apparatus here that I'm sitting at, and that's called a chevalet. And when I went over in the studio in Versailles, there was 20 of these in a row. And that's where they cut all the great marquetry in Versailles. So I was fortunate enough to bring one back. So I have one in my studio here. But you're taking this piece of 20, and you have your picture, and you're cutting them out. You drill a very small hole, 1/8 of a millimeter, you thread the blade through, and then this can be moved around as I'm pulling back and forth the saw blade. And this has 28 leaves to this flower. So I cut one leaf out, I put it down. I have to re-pierce my blade through, or cut the next one, put it down. And I recreate the whole picture on the tray next to me by the end of the day, when the cutting is done. Okay, so then you think, what background do I want? I have 20 of everything here. So I put it on a substrate, I put this down, just like a puzzle, and I fill in the pieces how I want them. Do I want, what color green leaf do I want? So you literally do that. This is held together by paper. Before you put them down, though, it's called sand shading. So if you look closely when we hand this around, that in the flowers, to get 3-dimensionality, in the studio I was working at, they had a 4-foot diameter with sand in a cast iron pot with a propane torch heating it. So you take all your leaves and you stick them vertically with a pair of tweezers, and you constantly go back and forth and monitor them. Within seconds, pull them up, and you get these burned edges, and that gives you the 3-dimensionality of the flower. Okay, so it's called sand shading. And if your cell phone rings, and I was there, there was a French kid there, a young guy, and they threw him out because his phone rang, he went to his phone, and all these burned up. He lost like 3 flowers, so the chef said, out, he threw his stuff right at the door. So they're very serious, they don't. So all this is done, it's sand shaded, it's glued down on a piece of paper. Now, just suppose this is for a door of an armoire that's missing a door. I have that door built already, so I had to go build that door with molding and hand planing. I take this, and I take the hide glue with the hammer veneer, and I put it down, and I start squeegeeing this like this, and I get this onto the substrate. And it dries overnight, it goes into a press. It's almost like a big book press, you've seen them, and it's heated. And you turn it down, you crank it down, and the next day, this is what you're seeing, it's on a piece of wood. So we have paper here. And what I have to do is start hydrating the paper with a sponge very lightly, and this craft paper will start to pull off. So the best picture is not this side, it's on the underside of this, which I've taken the most care to assemble. So that's my best picture. So.
But you're cutting the male and female parts out at the same time.
Same time, which is perfect. It wasn't always done that way, and a lot of Americans don't do that. They cut the hole, and then they try to cut the piece to go in the hole. It makes no sense because you figure it out, it's not easy. You got hundreds of pieces, thousands of pieces here. Yeah. But they've been doing this since 1710 or so. So they've been doing it for a long time this way. And then what are you going to do? You're going to come over and you're going to put your French polish. So that kind of finishes up what we're talking about today. But this can be done in precious stones, various metals, pewters, brass, bronzes. So all of these arts are used in my conservation and restoration. And my fear was when I got into this, when I was over there, that how about if I'm missing that certain one, casting or mold making or something, or bronze doré. What am I going to go to Paris to have it done? And if somebody's doing it legally in the back in Brooklyn, New York, I'm going to have to find it. So this way I have total control, but again, it makes for a big studio, too much stuff, and you got to be very organized. So I'll pass this around, you can take a look at this. So I just used 3 different types of material. I used pewter,
11:35.
and I used a blue paper over bronze and brass. So I get, by putting those 3 together, I got 3 different backgrounds and 3 different everythings. So considering our finish is based on alcohol, it can't hurt anything. Let's see. So, you know, your picture is really gonna jump. And you can see how beautiful the picture is gonna be just with clear finish on it. And you see all types of beautiful wood, different grains, burls, crotches, and that's all part of what you have to figure out in the beginning. How do you want this picture to look? So you have options. The only options are you're gonna use a Chevrolet, you're gonna use a modern day scroll saw, like the DeWalt scroll saw you buy at the Home Depot, or when I'm doing a small job, I'm using just a jeweler's or fret saw. Okay, and I put it on the side, I'm holding the piece over the side of the bench, I'm cutting like this. Okay, doing just a small restoration like on a Daniel Quare clock or something. So again, here's the substrate, and I'm reassembling. I have it totally reassembled. I have missing pieces, and this was the French literally went over and, you know, the excavations of Pompeii, they literally raped Pompeii, unfortunately, and so did the Americans. A lot of the Metropolitan was raped from Pompeii, but this is depicting that scene here. Pass that along to the line. And how are we on time?
It's 11:35.
Okay, we'll finish this up.
How do you feel like on the leaves, they have little lines? The leaves have little lines.
It's all saw cuts. Yeah,
So you well, you're still cutting it in the.
yeah. You'll cut in and then you'll back out.
But on like the top, they're like vines, little veins.
Yeah,
It's a cut.
it's a cut. It's all cut. It's not engraved. I mean, people that are cheating today try to go in and, you know, I mean, people that want to sex up something, a lot of restorers do it to make more money on it, or for unscrupulous clients here, you know, they'll take that marquetry top clock and maybe the marquetry was an overlay sometime, and they come in and they try to put those veins in with like a carving tool or something, or an X-Acto knife, so it's not good stuff, but. Okay, the last thing is just imagine the piece of marquetry of the clock case. This is how the Europeans have been finishing. This is how I do the finishing on English and French furniture. It's French polishing. But French polishing is no more than using shellac. Shellac is basically an ectoskeleton of the lac bug. It's only found from India. It's pretty bizarre, but that's just how it is. So there's a bug in India that attaches to a certain kind of tree, and people have gone down for 300 years, break off the twigs, scrape. So they actually create like a cocoon. And in the shellac, you'll find dead bodies, excrement of this bug in there. As the bug keeps building, he keeps building his little house. He dies, and he has family, new family. They die. The thing falls off, or somebody picks it up and uses it shellac. So shellac comes raw in a very heavy amber form, and it comes super blonde or double super blonde when it's totally purified. Okay. So here's our. This is unpurified, it looks milky, and it's going to go on that way. A lot of the 18th century mahogany and walnut clock cases here were used in this kind of shellac. A lot of times for restoration, though, I need to use clear shellac to build paint layers and things like that to bring a repair up to where I need it to be, and then put a UV inhibiting shellac on top, because one of the biggest faux pas a restorer conservator can do today is to make a wonderful repair, like we looked at the repair at Winterthur, the bottom of the stretch clock, piece of wood they added in the middle. Now, what they want to keep in mind is that 2 years down the road, they're going to look and say, oh, that repair is green. Okay, so they want to make sure, and I know that they do, that's what they do there. They make sure that those materials they're using will not turn and not change color. So they'll try to age simultaneously with the rest of the case, and that's very important. So shellac, or the art of French polishing, is no more than using shellac. It's called friction finishing. So this is not easy to see, but I can send it around. This is putting 2 coats of shellac on with a brush. I get started that way. I sand it down with sandpaper. They would have with shark skin paper. Okay. Then I use what the French call it tampon or pad. So this is a typical tampon or pad in France. Using a wool sock or something like that inside, just to hold a lot of material, to hold either shellac or alcohol. And this gets saturated, and you're taking that and you're doing figure eights, or you're doing loops back and forth. So alcohol is one of the fastest evaporating solvents. So you have a combination of shellac molecules and alcohol in here as a solvent. So what happens is you have that board, you have that side of the clock case. So if I took the shellac and put it there, assuming this was shellac and it's Urushi lacquer in this one, it would stick. It would like blend in. So what we need to do is to take some mineral oil, walnut oil, put a couple drops, and as I'm moving it around the case like this, I'm putting another layer of shellac on. And it's so interesting because the layer of oil is a big molecule, and the layer of shellac is a small molecule. So you have the oil layer with about 50 layers of shellac molecules, but it's a lubricant. It doesn't let it stick. So you hit it with oil molecule, and it's like a big beach ball rolling the shellac molecules onto the surface and building another coat without sticking. It's ingenious, but they've been doing this since 1650. How did they figure this out? It must all be by mistake. It must be by mistake. How did they get the lac from India? The lac, dry lac. They must have. And the lore is that they used wine. They were using various types of Bordeaux and Burgundy wines in France when they developed this, so they could achieve all kind of different colorations in their shellac that way also. And you end up putting about 20, 25 coats on here. So it does 2 things simultaneously. It gives you a protective finish, it enhances the wood, and it fills the grain, fills the pores.
I'm sorry, oil you used, you said mineral oil?
Mineral oil, walnut oil, cottonseed oil,
Linseed
linseed
oil.
oil, yeah.
And just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny, just a couple drops. And anyway, I think we got to get on the museum tour. I'm so sorry. I wish we could have a whole day. We could do the demonstrations, you know, and
Can I stay for the afternoon?
absolutely. But we, if you go online, I think we have about, I don't know, 40 videos
At least.
of YouTube videos, anywhere from 10 minutes to maybe, I don't know, 20, 25, half hour, talking about these processes of conservation, trying to get the word out, because there's in such a lull today. No one wants to take care of things and maintain things. And you know, the museum's been great here, and the educational department trying to get this jump started and trying to get people into the mode, which is not easy, particularly younger people, as we know. And then on another note, I'm doing historic house preservation, so I'm starting that now, timber framing, because of the expertise in the wood area, and there's a big demand. So everything is under the blanket of preservation conservation here, whether it's clock, watches, or wood in general. So,
Great, thank you, Greg.
have a good tour. I'm sorry I went over.
Now, where's the